What can water do for us? In my Every Teardrop is a Waterfall video, we talked about the cleansing abilities associated with water. But on top of that, water is what sustains life as we know it. It is the thing that gives us life. It has literally shaped our world over millions of years. The same power it holds to rejuvenate allows it to destroy. But how much water does it take to create an impact? What can, say, one glass of water do for us? You see, it has nothing to do with the water. It has everything to do with us. In fact, you'd be absolutely valid to point out to me now that the song Glass of Water by Coldplay clearly is not about a literal glass of water. And to that I might say, well, that's your perspective. There is an apparent meaning within the lyrics of Glass of Water, found especially in its chorus. We have this proverbial phrase, is the glass half empty or half full? The choice in phrasing is indicative of one's outlook. If you're an optimistic person, you see the glass is half full, with potential to become more full as time goes on. If you're a pessimistic person, you'll see the glass is half empty, on its way to becoming nothing. It's easy enough to pick the logistics of this phrase apart and argue that, anyway, even when the glass contains no liquid at all, it is still filled with air. That's not what we're doing. But it does prove a point. There is not one way to see this glass. There are not even two ways to see it. For every person who looks upon this glass, a new version of this glass exists. Everyone has their own perspective. Yet, we constantly strive for a singular vision of our universe. We need some ways in which anyone can understand what we go through. We need things that connect us to one another. This makes us susceptible to manipulation in a variety of ways, which may have both negative and positive consequences for us as individuals. Furthermore, we're born into a world with certain standards and customs. The specifics vary depending on where and when you grow up, but there is always some system in place. Over the course of human history, we've gained more and more control over the natural systems the universe has placed. Think even about the fact that you can watch this video. Ask yourself, what is a video? How did this video come to be? It's more than that I wrote a script and recorded a voiceover track and cut some footage together. This course of action was not possible for most of time up to our present day. Think about your internet. Think about your electronic devices. Think about what objects surround you wherever you are right now. How many of them were made by humans? Or else made by machines which humans created. Think about it long enough to realize that it was not always this way. It will not always be this way, nor is this the only way it could be. Now, let's do some lyrical analysis. The song begins thusly. Scared of losing all the time, he wrote it in a letter. He was a friend of mine. He heard you could see your future inside a glass of water, the ripples and the lines. And he asked, will I see heaven in mine? Concerned by potential future outcomes, a friend of the narrator seeks out methods for gaining the knowledge of what might become of him. Will I see heaven in mine? Will he be good enough to find eternal peace? Will he be a good person in the end? Will life treat him well? That is just the way it was. Nothing could be better, and nothing ever was. Let's ignore that Chris rhymes was with was. Actually, I will argue this is a much deeper line than the repetition makes it seem. A belief held that the current state of affairs, the status quo, is unchangeable. This belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy as it hinders the believer from taking any actions which could improve the current situation. Believing that nothing could be better means that nothing will become better because you shut out or neglect any opportunity for improvement. Oh, they say you can see your future inside a glass of water. The riddles and the rhymes. Will I see heaven in mine? Son, don't ask. Neither half full or empty is the glass. Cling to the mast, spend your whole life living in the past, going nowhere fast. The next part mirrors the beginning of the song just before we get to the chorus. The narrator's advice? Don't bother worrying about your future based on the truth of your past. Worrying about what will happen to you based on what you've done only leads you to miss out on the present. Again, you'll neglect opportunities that come along which would allow you to move your life forward, to improve your life, and you'll quickly become stuck where you are. So he wrote it on a wall. The hollowest of halos is no halo at all. If you live your life in such fear of being punished for who you are and constantly worry about the consequences of your actions to the point where you take no steps, positive or negative, this becomes the emptiest of existences. Focusing so much on being a perfect person to the point of never doing anything means, again, that you miss out on living. Television selling plastic figurines of leaders, saying nothing at all. The media we consume impacts us in the messages that we receive from it. Many people who hold positions of power use their platforms to manipulate others into thinking a certain way, when in reality, the words they spout have no real meaning or strength behind them. We're taught that the power they hold is deserved, that those without power do not deserve it, and that is why they don't have it. So we hear the empty words and begin to believe in them. We chant back the superstitions they convey to us. In addition, this line emphasizes a negative outlook and the feeling that nothing really matters. And you chime, stars in heaven align. This could be an allusion to constellations and asterisms broadly, including zodiac constellations, which form the basis of common astrology knowledge. These patterns and connections between the stars we see in the night sky have no tangible connection to one another beyond our, perspective. And whatever your opinion on astrology, for many, these connections hold relevance to many aspects of their lives. For some, this is their glass of water. The chorus repeats, and then we get a long instrumental interlude until the final two lines. Oh, what are we drinking when we're done? Glasses of water. It's easy to fall into the trap of what we're told to believe. However, if we take a step back to assess the reality, we can begin to question the validity of what we've been told. What are we drinking when we're done? In the end, the superstitions we rely on to determine our own self-worth are nothing but that. There's nothing magical about a glass of water that allows you to see into your future, that allows you to know if you're a good person or not. That's not what the water is for. In the end, we only have ourselves to determine that. Ignoring that fact and favoring some, perhaps, divine intervention means that we continue to perpetuate the systems in place which hold us back. There are many forces that act on us that are out of our control, and there's nothing inherently wrong with believing in some connection to those forces, whatever they may be for you. But one can't deny that these beliefs can easily be used to excuse acts of wrongdoing and remove an individual's agency. You can look into the ripples and the lines and hope to see heaven in your future, but the work does not stop there. You still need to act to create that future. Wanting to find answers without doing the work, looking for something outside of yourself to rid yourself of all that responsibility, leads down a dark path. Have you ever heard the phrase, drinking the KoolAid? Okay. Drinking the KoolAid doesn't have a direct relation to the song Glass of Water per se. At least, I don't believe Chris Martin intended there to be a connection. But this phrase has come to mean that a person or group of people have turned over their individual thought to an external power. Think sheeple. Think cults. I'm gonna dive deeper into this, but first I want to issue a warning that the story behind this phrase, drinking the KoolAid, is a disturbing one, and will mention or allude to religious cults, poison, and murder/suicide. The phrase drinking the KoolAid originates from a sequence of events that took place on November 18th, 1978, surrounding what was known as Jonestown, an agricultural project established by the People's Temple, a religious group based in California, which immigrated to Guyana in the mid-1970s to establish an agricultural utopia. The San Diego State University website on Jonestown states that on November 18, 1978, a U.S. congressman was assassinated, along with 4 other individuals, at a jungle airstrip in South America. These tragic killings were followed by the mass murders and suicides of 900 men, women, and children by ingesting potassium cyanide mixed into a vat of fruit punch and tranquilizers. The fruit punch in question apparently used Flavor-Aid, not KoolAid, but the latter is what came to be known in reference to this mass murder. An audio recording of Jonestown leader Jim Jones addressing the settlement's people and alerting them to an imminent threat is available through Wikimedia Commons. Seek it out and listen at your own discretion. The congressman who was killed earlier that day had visited to inspect Jonestown. Jim Jones stood before his followers and convinced them that unless they were to take their own lives and the lives of their children by ingesting this poisoned drink, they would have to endure greater suffering at the hands of whoever would be sent in response to that inspection and the subsequent death of the congressman and others. However, this was not a new concept to the people of Jonestown, as they had been made before to participate in practice drills of this exact process, pretending to drink a poisoned substance and feigning death in order to prove their loyalty. Though some who died that day may have had no choice but to drink, pressured by armed guards and their peers, certainly many had been conditioned to accept this particular course of action. This is a very extreme circumstance, and of course there are way more details to the story that I couldn't include here, but hopefully you can see this overarching theme of unquestioned belief in something, neglecting one's own ability to analyze and think critically in order to be given some magic solution that will solve all your problems, or else ignoring that inner perception and going along with whatever until it's too late, not standing up until you're in too deep to stand. Often the sinking happens over time, little by little. This is a very extreme circumstance, but the steps that lead to the extreme circumstance are often far more subtle. There's something else that happens in the process of looking into one's glass of water. You might find someone looking back. If the friend looks into a glass of water to see his future, surely he'll only see his reflection. Though technically observing a present moment, typically reflections are used for characters to reflect on themselves and their past. Although what they see in the reflection is their current selves, it often brings about a focus on what has come before this moment and a consideration of what may be to come. For writershelpingwriters.net, James Scott Bell explains a concept conveyed in his book, Write Your Novel from the Middle. In many popular stories, there is a moment within the midpoint that serves to summarize and emphasize a central theme of the story for the audience, and motivates the character to make the change necessary to advance the plot. Bell writes, "It's about the lead character taking a long, hard look at himself, as in a mirror. He asks, 'Who am I? What have I become? Who am I supposed to be?' This is a moment of realization for the character, an assessment. When the narrator's friend asks, 'Will I see heaven in mine?' he is asking, 'Who am I? What have I become? Who am I supposed to be?' This action can have a profound effect on a person, taking the time to think critically about their life, what they've gone through, and what lies ahead. But still, this is a turning point, not an end point. A character can experience this moment and be driven forward by it because someone wrote the story that way. Outside of fiction, people can have these moments of reflection, but again, must act on that revelation afterward, or else nothing truly changes. And what they find impacts that motivation. If you're unhappy with your current situation and/or the past situations you've experienced, then it can be extremely difficult to imagine a future of possibility. For some, it might seem like this present time is the best they're going to get. Granted, equally for some that will be true. Even if they act to create a better future for themselves, that may not come to fruition. Glass of water, or at least my interpretation of it, is not denying this or suggesting that anyone in that situation simply didn't try hard enough. There are forces that act on us that are out of our control. The point is not to say, just do this and everything will work out. In fact, that is exactly the sentiment Glass of Water is simultaneously arguing against. You can't hold on to your past so tightly that you forget to move forward. At the same time, there is no blueprint for moving forward. Look to the past to see what has been done before, seek out advice from others in the present, but know that ultimately the final judgment is your own. Coldplay's Glass of Water encourages us to think critically about ourselves and the world around us. The song does not promote either an optimistic or pessimistic outlook on life. Like many Coldplay songs, the key is balance. When we're done, the meaning we gave only exists in the context of ourselves. To see only the negative masks the opportunities for improvement. To see only positive masks the harm in the world we participate in. To look outside ourselves for answers can be noble, but only if we remember to also look within.